Dear students, in this video lecture, we are going to study the history of Mauryan dynasty. So I am pretty sure that any student of history, or let's say any student for that matter, even if he is not deep into Indian history, I am pretty sure that he must have heard the name of this dynasty, which is Mauryan dynasty. So, Mauryan dynasty is considered to be one of the most powerful and glorious dynasty that India has ever known. So, it was a large scale, it was really a huge dynasty, as you can see in the map. So, the extent of this dynasty, it almost covered the entire stretch of India as well as present day Pakistan and Afghanistan. So it was a really powerful and potent empire that occurred in ancient India. So let us understand that what was this Mauryan dynasty, who were the people who established this Mauryan dynasty, and how the things unfolded during those days. Now, you see, when it comes to ancient dynasties or ancient families, so these dynasties or these families are known after one of the great kings. For example, if let's say in a particular dynasty we know of one great king, but in case of Mauryan dynasty, it has produced two of the greatest kings that India has ever known. That is Chandragupta Maurya and King Ashoka. So this is such a huge, such a prestigious, such a powerful and potent university. So potent dynasty. So let's today understand the history of this dynasty. So let us see what was this dynasty all about. So Mauryan Empire is said to be the most powerful and large scale empire that took shape in ancient India. So after the end of Vedic age, by the end of 4th century BC, so when is the Vedic age supposed to have ended? So Vedic period started from 1500 BC and it lasted up till 600 BC. So what happened after the end of Vedic period? So after the end of Vedic period, people have started to move from villages to city, and cities, large scale cities have started to emerge after the end of Vedic civilization, because Vedic civilization was more or less village based, agro economy, village based. But after the end of Vedic civilization, people began to migrate to big towns. So big cities, big towns were coming up. So if big towns and big cities were coming up, so that led to foundation of kingdoms. Because if you live in village, that means very few people live in a particular village. But when it comes to cities, so the cities have huge population, so it requires a permanent administration. So this is how things were changing during those times. So the ancient scriptures or ancient religious texts tells us that there were 16 such large cities, or you can say large kingdoms, which were known as Mahajanpads. And out of these 16 Mahajanpad, there was a Mahajanpad known as Magad. So Magad, which roughly corresponds to present day city of Patna. Patna is the capital of Bihar. So in ancient days, that means just after the end of Vedic civilization, this city of Magad, which is the present day Patna, so it emerged as the most powerful of all the Mahajanpads. That means Vedic civilization have ended and Mahajanpads have started to come up, and out of all these 16 Mahajanpad, this Magad Mahajanpad had emerged as the seat of power of Uttarpat. So what is meant by seat of power? That means the political center or the political center of activity, because all these Mahajanpads, they were fighting with each other for political supremacy, and it is actually Magad, out of these 16 Mahajanpads, Magad became as the victor. So they emerged as the seat of power of Uttarpat. Now what is Uttarpat? Uttar in Hindi means north. North. So North India, this is the Vedic era term for North India, because during those times there were no fancy names such as North India, South India. So this was the term given by people of those times, that Uttar Pradesh, North India. So basically, Magad was the center of political power of entire North India when when we are talking about. So this is on the eve of the establishment of, you can say, Mauryan Empire. So this is the political situation that was prevailing during those times. So Magad was lucky to have great rulers like Bimbisar, Ajatsatru, Mahapadmanand. So why did Magad become such a great empire? Because it was ruled by, or it got the opportunity to be ruled by great rulers. So these rulers are, considered to be very great, very glorious in Indian history, and all they have ruled from Magad. So that means their capital city was Magad. So slowly and gradually Magad became stronger and stronger. And by the end of, that means Magad was dominating the political scenario of the country during those times. So this was happening during 5th and 4th century BC. And how was this happening actually? Because Magad and adjoining Mahajanpads, because this was a time period of great political upheaval. Things were changing very fast. Vedic dynasty had already ended. So there was so much going on. So Magad and adjoining Mahajanpads were also witnessing cultural revival. What is meant by cultural revival? Because you see, Vedic civilization had come up with their own set of cultures, religious practices. So now that Vedic civilization had ended, so new religious practices, new religions, so new religions like Jainism and Buddhism were taking shape. So it was under these circumstances. What circumstances? That means so much was happening. So much was happening in Magad. Not only Magad, that means Magad and its adjoining region. But what was so special about Magad? Because it was the political center. It was acting as the seat of power of Uttar Pradesh. That means the entire North India. So it was under these circumstances that a young man called Chandragupta Maurya. So there was a young man whose name was Chandragupta Maurya. So he led a revolt against the ruler of Magad. Now just understand that how big, how powerful the Mahajanpad, or you can say the kingdom of Magad was. And a young boy, a young man, he engineered a revolt against the king of such a powerful kingdom. So this young man, that is, after having revolted against the ruler, what is meant by revolt? So if you revolt against the ruler, that means you are dethroning. That means you are asking him to step out of the throne. You want the king to go. Or in other words, you can say that one dynasty ended and the next one started. So if you revolt against the king, that means you have a ambition to overtake the throne. So that is what this man did. So this young man sat on the throne of Magad. So what he did, first he revolted against the king of Magad. So after revolting, the king was gone. So he managed to dethrone him. So after dethroning, he himself sat on the throne of Magad. So this happened in 321 BC. You need to remember this date because Mauryan dynasty is very important. So you can see, I will be brutally honest with you. If somebody asks me as a teacher that which are the two most important topics from ancient Indian history, I would say Indus Valley civilization and then Mauryans. So you have to, you can't afford to ignore these small pieces of data when it comes to this chapter because this is too important a chapter. So this dynasty that we are talking about, the Mauryan dynasty, it got established in 321 BC. So it was a new dynasty because it has just been formed by this person named Chandragupta Maurya. So this new empire, that means this empire which was formed under these circumstances, it ruled India for 136 years. Why it is said ruled India? Because ruling Magad was like ruling entire India, because Magad was acting like the capital of India. So if you are the ruler of Magad, you are virtually the ruler of entire country. So this new empire lasted for 136 years before being overthrown. That means dynasties are overthrown, new dynasties are formed. So this dynasty got the opportunity to rule the country for 136 years, and today it is a very well respected dynasty. Historians have to say so many good things about this dynasty, and this dynasty has given us two of the greatest rulers that India has ever known. The first one is Chandragupta Maurya himself, because it takes so much of courage to revolt against the king of Magad and to find your own empire. So he is considered to be a great king, no doubt. Now let us understand what was the actual political situation which led to the foundation of Magad Empire. So let us understand what was going on politically. Alexander, you must have heard about this name Alexander. So he was basically a Greek invader, Greek warrior, you can say Greek warrior king. So he entered India in 326 BC. So he had set out on a dream of conquering the entire world, and during that expedition he also came to India. He also wanted to conquer India. So he had come to India in 326 BC. At that time, Magad was ruled by a king whose name was Ghananand. Ghananand. So the question is asked, this question is commonly asked, that who was the ruler of Magad? They may also ask you who was the ruler of India, because being the ruler of Magad virtually makes you the ruler of India. So who was the ruler of Magad when Alexander had entered India? The king was King Ghananand. So King Ghananand belonged to a dynasty known as Nand dynasty. So the ruler was from Nand dynasty. Ghananand had a huge empire and army. So this guy Ghananand, who was at that time the ruler of Magad, he had a huge army and empire. Why? Because Magad is very powerful. So if you are ruler of Magad, it means you have a very large army and empire at your disposal, at your command. So same was the case with Ghananand. Just because he was the ruler of Magad, he was very powerful. So Ghananand had a huge empire and army, but the problem was that he was very arrogant. He did not listen to his own ministers and other intellectual persons. He was very unpopular among his subjects. That means his own citizens of Magad, did not like their king. So when forces of Alexander captured areas of northwest India, that means why have Alexander come to India? He did not come to India to pay a visit or to roam around just like that. He had come to capture India. So he started capturing parts of India. So when Alexander started to capture parts of northwest India, Dhananand did nothing, because he should have done something to stop Alexander, because he was the ruler of Magad. So the responsibility of defending the country, whatever was the notion of the country back then, because what we know of India as of today, back then India was very, very large. It was at least twice as large as today's India. So the onus, or you can say the responsibility of defending the country against the onslaught of Alexander lied with Dhananand. But this guy, he did nothing. He was the ruler of Magad. He had huge empire and army, but he did absolutely nothing to stop Alexander. Chanakya, a professor from Gandhar. So Gandhar was a Mahajanpad. Gandhar was a Mahajanpad, just like Magad was. So there was a guy known as Chanakya. Today, this guy is very, very famous in Indian history. So, he was basically a professor in Takshashila University. So, Takshashila was an ancient university in Gandhar. So, what was Gandhar? It was a Mahajanpad. You can say it was a great town. So he was a professor there. Alexander had entered Gandhar because Gandhar was located in northwest India only. So Gandhar is, you can say, located in borders of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So at that time, as per the ancient Indian map, it was the part of northwest India. So when Alexander had already entered Gandhar, this professor known as Chanakya, he approached Dhananand. So Dhananand is also called as Ghananand. These are just variations of his spelling. So that's why I have used both spellings so that you can realize the fact that two different spellings are used for this guy. So Chanakya approached the ruler of Magad that, sir, since you are ruler of Magad, please do something to stop Alexander. So he wanted Dhananand to interfere, but he got insulted by the king. The king said that I don't want you to advise me. I am the king. I will decide what I am supposed to do. So I don't need people like you to advise me. So Chanakya felt insulted. He was actually insulted by the king. So after getting insulted, Chanakya took a vow. So he took an oath that I am going to take revenge from the king. So he took an oath that I am not going to spare this king. So when he says that I am not going to spare the king, I am going to take revenge from the king. So he basically wanted to overthrow the king. So Chanakya had taken the oath that very soon you will not be the king anymore. I will make sure that you are thrown out of the kingdom. You are no more the king. So for that, Chanakya started making preparations because he had taken oath to overthrow the king. He came to know about a young boy who came to know Chanakya. So Chanakya came to know about a young boy popular among the citizens of Patliputra. What is this Patliputra? It was the capital city of Magad. So Magad is the kingdom, Patliputra is the capital. So Patliputra is modern day Patna. So Chanakya came to know about a boy who was well respected by the citizens of Magad and had ambitions to become a king. So this guy is Chandragupta Maurya. So Chandragupta Maurya was a citizen of Magad who had ambitions. He wanted to become a king. So you have two personalities. One is Chanakya, the other is Chandragupta Maurya. So Chanakya wants to overthrow the king. The other personality, Chandragupta Maurya, he wants to become the king. So they both team up. They both become a team. So Chandragupta Maurya, the boy who wanted to become the king, was taken by Chanakya under his guidance because both will serve each other's purpose. One wants to overthrow the king, the other wants to become the king himself. So they both team up and together they started on a journey to overthrow the Nand dynasty. So they both are credited with overthrowing the Nand dynasty. So it is under these circumstances that political, you can say, scenarios are changing. So let's see what happened next. So let's see how did they succeed in their plan. So let's understand how was the Mauryan Empire founded. So Chandragupta, under the guidance of Chanakya, managed to create a new empire within 4 years. So they had come together somewhere around Alexander's visit. So when this all started to happen around 326 BC. So it was around this time that Chandragupta met Chanakya, and within 4 years they managed to overthrow the king of Magad. So just understand that how intelligent, how courageous these people were. So Chandragupta first gained regional prominence in northwestern parts of India. So it was not that straight away Chandragupta went to Magad and he said to the king that please leave the throne, I will become the next king. No, it didn't happen overnight. So Chandragupta took step by step. So he took steps before he actually became the king. The first thing he did was to gain regional prominence in northwestern part of India. What do you mean by this? Because northwestern part of India was under attack by Greek forces. Alexander had come from Greece, so he had not come alone. He was also followed by other Greek invaders, other Greek warriors, or other, you can say, other Greek military generals. So northwestern part of India was under threat of attack. So the first thing that Chandragupta did was he defended northwestern part of India. So this was the responsibility of king of Magad, but he refused to do that. He said that I am not going to interfere. So instead of him, it was actually Chandragupta who defended northwestern part of India. Alexander had abandoned his Indian conquest in 324 BC. So Alexander had returned back from India by 324 BC, and within an year Chandragupta had defeated some of the Greek ruled cities in the northwestern part of the country, because I already told you that Alexander had captured some cities in northwestern part of India. And when he went back from India, so seeking the opportunity, Chandragupta attacked and freed those cities, freed the cities which were captured by Alexander. So it is because of this fact that Greek historian Justin, this is a very important question. So Justin, Greek historian, because Greeks were witnessing that this guy known as Chandragupta, he is recapturing the areas captured by our king Alexander. So Justin says that India, after the death of Alexander, had shaken. So Alexander, who is a Greek historian, he is telling this, that after Alexander died, India shook away its yoke of servitude. What is yoke of servitude? That means India had been captured by Alexander. India means northwestern part of India. It had been captured, so it had been chained. So you can say that when Alexander died, this chain was broken and put his governors to death. That means the people of India, they revolted against the Greeks and they started to kill them. So who were these? Who was the leader of this revolt? The leader of this liberation was Sandrocotus. So Greek historians mention a person known as Sandrocotus. This person is actually Chandragupta, because Chandragupta liberated parts of northwestern India from the clutches of Greek. So this is very important question, that this line is said about which Indian ruler. If you will, this thing is not mentioned in question. Many a times only this line is asked. That who shook the yoke of servitude from its neck. So you'll have to know that this is Chandragupta, Sandrocotus. So because of this, Chandragupta is also known as liberator of India. Chandragupta then set out to conquer the Nand Empire centered in Patliputra, Magad. So after having freed northwestern part of India, so he now sets an eye to become the emperor of Magad, because Chanakya was with him. He was not alone. So Chanakya had already taken an oath that I will make you the ruler of Magad. So let's put our forces together, let's go to Magad. So the next thing that Chandragupta did was he set out to conquer the Nanda Empire, because Magad was that time ruled by a person known as Dhananand or Ghananand. So this guy Ghananand, he belonged to a dynasty known as Nand dynasty. So in 321 BC, Chanakya and his protege. Protege means you can say his student. So Chanakya and his student Chandragupta managed to overthrow Ghananand from his throne. So they actually managed to overthrow Ghananand from his throne. So if the king is overthrown, that means his dynasty comes to an end. So thereby bringing an end to Nand dynasty. So actually Ghananand, he was not very popular. So these people, Chanakya and Chandragupta, they took support of people of Patliputra, and it was actually the people who supported, who wanted that Ghananand must go and Chandragupta must replace him. So thus after 5 years of Alexander's invasion, Mauryan Empire came to power. So Mauryan Empire came to power because Ghananand was overthrown. He was overthrown by Chandragupta Maurya. So his name was Chandragupta Maurya. That's why the new dynasty is called as Mauryan dynasty. And the capital of this new dynasty is also Patliputra. Because Patliputra is the capital of Magad. So if you have to become the ruler of Magad, your capital will be Patliputra. So this is how Mauryan dynasty got founded. So now let us understand a few things about Chanakya, because questions have been asked about Chanakya as well. So he was the teacher of Chandragupta Maurya, who was also his chief minister. That means when Chandragupta Maurya became the king, Chanakya became his chief minister. He was a teacher and scholar at Takshila. So Takshila was an ancient university. So he was a scholar and teacher. So his other names are Vishnu Gupta and Kautulya. Very important piece of information. So Vishnu Gupta and Kautulya and Chanakya, they are the same person. Same. He was also a minister in the court of Bindusara. So this Bindusara is Chandragupta Maurya's son. So when Chandragupta Maurya became old, he was succeeded by his son Bindusara. So Chanakya, he was the chief minister for the father as well as for his son. Chanakya is credited to be the master strategist behind the uprising of Nand throne. As we just saw that it was actually Chanakya who prepared Chandragupta Maurya and helped him. So he was the master strategist behind usurping the Nand throne. This is very important fact that he wrote Arthashastra. So he basically wrote a book that how should a king rule, because he wanted to make India very powerful, very strong, defendable against foreign powers. So he wrote a book addressed to the king. So he wanted to teach the kings that how should you rule, how should you manage the administration, statecraft, what should be the economic policies, how should you make military strategies. So the name of that book is Arthashastra. So the question has been asked that what is Arthashastra? Many people think that Arthashastra is a book of economics. No, Arthashastra is not a book of economics. It's a book of administration. How should a king administer? And it also includes economic principle. So it is not basically an economics book. It is a comprehensive book, and it also contains some economic lectures. How should a king make his economic decisions? So it also contains informations on trade and markets, ministers, spies, duties. That means various things that a king is bothered about. Now Chanakya is also called Indian Machiavelli. So Indian Machiavelli. So Machiavelli is basically he is known as father of world politics, political philosophy. Political philosophy. He was an Italian who lived in 15th century AD. So Chanakya is said to be ancient or Indian Machiavelli. I think Machiavelli should be called modern Chanakya and not the other way. But anyways, so you have to remember this fact that Chanakya is known as Indian Machiavelli because of its political acumen, political sharpness of mind. Now let's understand a few facts about Chandragupta Maurya. So it is generally accepted that he was born in a humble caste. Humble caste means during ancient time there was caste system. Caste system, that means there was hierarchy of caste. The uppermost caste was Brahmins. The lowermost caste was of Shudra. So it is, they are trying to convey that he belonged to the lower caste, caste of Shudra. Greek accounts mention him as Sandrocotus. Why does Greek account talks about Sandrocotus? Because Sandrocotus or Chandragupta, he have taken back the territories originally occupied by the Greeks. He started the Mauryan dynasty in 321 BC. 321 BC. So from 324 BC he started, you can say he started his struggle, but the actual foundation of the empire took place in 321 BC. In 305 BC, he marched against Seleucus Nicator. So 305 BC, that means about you can say 15 years after becoming the king. So when he had become the king, after 15 years of that, he marched against Seleucus Nicator. So who was Seleucus Nicator? He was the successor of Alexander, because Alexander came to India, he captured land and then he returned back and died on his way. Alexander died on his way. So what happened to these territories? Some of it Chandragupta have already liberated, but vast area was all you can say still under control of Alexander's successors. So Seleucus Nicator was the military general of Alexander, and he was the successor of you can say Alexander in India. So Chandragupta Maurya thought that whatever remaining portions is under the control of Greek forces, I will liberate that as well. So in 305 BC, he marched against Seleucus Nicator and defeated him. So he was really powerful, Chandragupta Maurya. So a treaty was signed between Seleucus, and as per that treaty, Seleucus gave Chandragupta eastern Afghanistan, Baluchistan and area west of Indus, and so you can basically say that he managed to free the northwestern part of ancient India. Because if you look in today's map, that area is Afghanistan and Pakistan. So these parts were actually part of ancient India. So Chandragupta Maurya finally manages to liberate these remaining portions as well. And in return, Chandragupta gifted 500 elephants to Seleucus and married his daughter. So a peace treaty was signed between whom? Alexander and Seleucus Nicator. Megasthenes, please remember this name. Megasthenes was sent to Mauryan court as Greek ambassador. Who sent? Seleucus Nicator, because the peace treaty was signed. So if you sign peace treaty, that means you start diplomatic relations. You send your people in the court of other king, and the other king will also do the same, so that you maintain friendly relation. Communication is established. So Seleucus Nicator sent his ambassador. So the name of the ambassador was Megasthenes. So Megasthenes came as an ambassador. He lived in Patliputra, because Patliputra was the capital of Magad, and Chandragupta Maurya was now the king of Magad. So Megasthenes came to India, remained in Patliputra, lived in Patliputra, and he wrote a book named Indica. So Indica is basically, you can say, commentary on ancient India. So whatever Megasthenes saw, he wrote it down, and the name of that book is Indica. So Chandragupta Maurya controlled almost whole of India, but was unable to conquer kingdom of Kaling. So you see, he was so powerful. Chandragupta Maurya was very powerful. He could even defeat successors of Alexander. He can also defeat King Dhananand of Magad, but he could not conquer the kingdom of Kaling. Kaling means modern day Odisha. So this you have to remember that Kaling was not part of Mauryan dynasty during the lifetime of Chandragupta Maurya. He could not defeat them. The other important fact that you need to remember is that during his reign, Magad faced a 12-year-long famine. So during whose reign Magad faced a 12-year-long famine? So it was Chandragupta Maurya. So because of this, because there was famine, there was no rain, so there was no water for cultivation. So farmers, they suffered a huge loss. So when the king saw this, so he thought that let me take some steps. So Chandragupta Maurya ordered the construction of Sudarshan Lake in Junagadh. You have to remember this. Sudarshan Lake in Junagadh, it is still present today. So it's a 3,000-year-old lake. So if you will go to Junagadh, you can see that still today. So it was actually built on the orders of Chandragupta Maurya. So Chandragupta Maurya gave up his throne and his son Bindusar became the next Maurya king in 297 BC. See, I will tell you the entire story. So there was this 12-year-long famine. So Chandragupta Maurya thought that I must have done something which displeased the god. That means gods are not happy with me. If they were happy, there would have been no famine. So Chandragupta Maurya thought that let me give up my throne. So he gave up his throne. That means he did not wait for his death. He gave up his throne and his son Bindusar became the next Mauryan king in 297 BC. So what did the king do after giving up the throne? So after giving up the throne, Chandragupta went to Karnataka. Why did he go to Karnataka? Because he thought that gods are not happy with me. So let me leave my throne. Let me go to some quiet place and let me repent. Let me spend rest of my life seeking forgiveness from God. So he went to Karnataka with Jain monk Bhadrabahu. So he was accompanied by monk Bhadrabahu, and after going to Karnataka, he embraced Jainism. So he embraced Jainism and is said to have starved himself to death, according to the Jain tradition, at Shravanbelgola. So the place in Karnataka where he had gone, so that place was Shravanbelgola. So what did he do there? He wanted to seek forgiveness from God. So he starved himself to death. He started doing penance. He started to ask forgiveness. He stopped taking food and water and starved himself to death. So this is actually a practice followed by Jain monks. So Jain monks, when they want to leave their body, so they simply stop taking food and water. So this is what actually Chandragupta Maurya did. So now let us understand who was his successor. He was succeeded by his son Bindusar. So now let us understand how Bindusar ruled, what all the major events that took place during his lifetime. So Bindusar was the son of Chandragupta Maurya and he inherited a vast empire from his father. Greek sources call him Amitrochets or Amitrghat. Why Greek sources know about Bindusar? Because Chandragupta Maurya had already established friendly relationships with Greek. Chandragupta Maurya had an ambassador in his court. His name was Megasthenes. So Greeks were aware about Chandragupta as well as about his sons. So Greek sources call Bindusar as Amitrochets or Amitrghat. What is meaning of Amitrghat? The person who slays his enemy, killer of his enemy. So thereby indicating that Bindusar was very strict with his enemies. He did not spare his enemies. So Bindusar had two sons, Sumana and Ashok. So Shumana is also known as Sushin or Shushima. So Ashoka later succeeded him after his death. Chanakya worked as prime minister of Bindusar too. So as we already discussed that Chandragupta Maurya had gone to Karnataka, but Chanakya did not leave Magad. He was still in Patliputra. So Chandragupta made his son the next king and asked Chanakya to take care of his son. Please remember this fact very carefully. He brought 16 states under the Mauryan Empire and is called the conqueror of land between the two seas. It is actually Bindusar. See, if you look at India's map, so this is Bay of Bengal, this is Arabian Sea. So Bindusar, he conquered 16 kingdoms and is said to be the conqueror of land between two seas. Which two seas? Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. So it is actually Bindusar. Bindusar did not conquer Dravidian kingdoms. Dravidian kingdoms means kingdoms of South India. So he did not conquer kingdoms of South India, you can say. So which were the kingdoms that were ruling? So when Mauryans were ruling from Magad, so there were other kingdoms present as well. As you saw, Kaling was there. Chandragupta Maurya tried so hard, but he could not conquer Kaling. That means other kingdoms were also prevailing. So during that time, Dravidian kingdoms of Cholas, Pandyas and Cheras. So Bindusar did not feel the need to conquer it because they were friendly. They had friendly relations with Magad. So why to conquer them? Why to fight with them? Kaling was the only kingdom in India that did not form the part of Bindusar's empire. So Kaling that means modern day Odisha. So Chandragupta Maurya could also not defeat the Kaling people, neither his son could. That means Bindusara also could not make Kaling part of his kingdom. This was later done by his son Ashok. So later on, it was actually his son Ashok who managed to defeat Kaling and made Kaling part of his empire. Bindusar is also known as the son of a great father and father of a great son. Please remember the fact, which Indian ruler is known as son of a great father and father of the great son? Answer has to be Bindusara. Why? Son of a great father. Because he is the son of Chandragupta Maurya. So that's why he is son of a great father, because his father is great. His father is Chandragupta Maurya. And he is father of a great son. He is father of Ashok. You will see Ashok will become the next king and he is considered to be the greatest ruler India have known. Ashoka the Great. So Bindusar's father was also great. Bindusar's son is also great. See, they are well respected in history. So that's why Bindusar is known as son of a great father and father of a great son. Another fact, Bindusar had friendly relationships with Syrian king Antiochus. Syria, just understand, Patliputra and Syria, they are at least 4,000 kilometers away. So he had friendly relationships with Syrian king Antiochus. How do we know that? Because of Greek texts. So these Greek historians, they have written all these stories that Bindusar requested his friend was king of Syria. So Bindusar requested his friend Antiochus to send him sweet wine, dried figs and sophist. Sophist is basically a philosopher. So Syria was under Greek influence at that time. So these are basically Greek people. They already had relationships with Greek. So Bindusar asked King Antiochus that I have heard that you people have got great wine, great fig, and you also have some of the best philosophers of the world. So please send some of them over to Magad. So Antiochus did actually send fig and wine for his friend because they shared friendly relations. But he said that I am unable to send a philosopher. He said that you have asked me for three things. You have for wine, I will send that. You have asked me for fig. Fig is a type of fruit. So you have asked me for fruit, I will send you fruit. But I cannot send you the philosopher. I cannot send you the philosopher because the Greek rules do not allow the king to exchange philosophers, because philosophers are not materials of exchange. They are respected intellectuals. They are respected like a king. So exchange of philosopher was not allowed. So please remember, this incident happened during the lifetime of Bindusara. So this incident is related to Bindusar. Now, after Bindusar, there was a war of succession. So when Chandragupta Maurya left the throne, there was no fighting, because he did it very smoothly. He left his throne. He asked his son Bindusar to become the next king. But when Bindusar died, there was problem. There was fighting. Out of many sons of Bindusar, two prominent ones were Sushim and Ashok. So Bindusar had so many sons, but out of his so many sons, two prominent ones are Sushim and Ashok. So now let's see how and why they. So his elder son Sushim was his favorite. That means Bindusar wanted his elder son Sushim to become the next king. But he knew that my other sons will not agree to it. That means he knew that his sons will start to fight. So to avoid this conflict, King Bindusar made Ashok the governor of faraway Ujjain. So you have to remember this, that before becoming king, Ashok was the governor of Ujjain. So he said that let me send Ashok out of Patliputra. So that if brothers will not stay at same place, they will not fight. So he made Ashok the governor of Ujjain, and he sent his elder son Sushim as the governor of Taxila. So he sent him to Taxila, which is in Pakistan. So he sent his one son to Taxila, the other to Ujjain. So Ashok was the governor of Ujjain. When people of Taxila revolted against Sushim, so Sushim was the governor of Taxila, that means elder brother. So when people of Taxila, they revolted against the elder brother, the younger brother Ashoka went to Taxila. He was asked by his father Bindusar that go and help your big brother. So Ashok went to help his brother Sushim, and they managed to quash the rebellion. So question is asked that people of which city have revolted during the time of Bindusar. So this all is happening when Bindusar is still alive. So Bindusar died in 273 BC. Dates are not important. And this led to a war of succession between his sons. That means before dying, he had not made it clear, or he had not promised any of his sons that you will become the next king. That means all his sons started to fight. So Ashok, with the help of his minister Radhagupta, so he had a minister, Ashok had a minister, because he was already a governor. So he had some people to help him. So his minister Radhagupta helped Ashok, and together they killed his elder brother and chief contender Sushima. So two brothers were fighting, Sushim and Ashok. So Ashok finally killed his elder brother. So his elder brother was killed with the help of a minister known as Radhagupta. So this minister will now become his prime minister. Promotion. So in total, Ashok killed his 99 brothers. So Buddhist text, they tell us a story that Ashok set on a war of succession. So he said that I will kill all my brothers so that nobody else dare to take the throne from me. So he killed his 99 brothers and allowed his youngest brother Tishir to live. So he allowed only one of his brother to stay alive. His name was Tishir. Now let's understand how and how was the administration of Ashoka, how did he rule, what are the major events of his life. So Ashok was the son of Bindusar and mother's name was Subhrangi, and that way he was the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya. His other names, this very important, Ashok is also known as Devnampiya. Devnampiya means beloved of the gods. That means God loves him. Piya, favorite of gods, and Piyadasi. So please remember these two are the names of Ashok. Ashok, which ruler is also known as Devnampiya, which ruler is also known as Piyadasi. So it is Ashok. He is considered one of India's greatest emperors, of course. He was born in 304 BC. You need not remember dates. His reign lasted from 268 BC to 232. So he ruled almost for like 30-35 years. So at its zenith, at the height of power, Ashoka's empire stretched from Afghanistan to Bangladesh. So just understand, almost entire ancient India. It covered almost the whole of Indian subcontinent except present day Kerala and Tamil Nadu and modern day Sri Lanka. So it covered almost entire India except Kerala and Tamil Nadu, because these are South Indian empires and they were friendly. They shared friendly relationships with Mauryans. That's why Mauryans did not attack them. So Mauryans also controlled modern day Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka was also under control of Mauryan dynasty under Ashok. This happened under Ashok. What else do you need to know about King Ashok? That Ashok built many edicts all over India, including in present day Nepal and Pakistan. What is edict? So edicts are basically rocks, pieces of rocks which are polished and written over it. So whatever the king wanted to convey to his people, suppose king wanted to convey to his people that nobody should steal. So what he did, he took a rock, he got it written over the rock and got it planted in the mid of the city. So that is what is the concept of edict. So Ashoka has built rock edicts all over his kingdom, which are visible even today. So Ashoka's capital was at Patliputra, and he had provincial capitals. Provincial capital means kingdom is very large. So kingdom is very large. So entire kingdom was broken into provinces, small regions, regional provinces. So regional capitals at Takshashila and Ujjain. So you can see Ashok himself was the governor of Ujjain when his father was alive, and his brother was the governor of Takshashila. So these two cities are the most prominent cities, you can say. Ashok was trained in military and weapon skills, and he was a great administrator. You know all this. So in the war of succession, so Ashok emerged victorious. We have already seen this. So when he became the king, so when Ashok became the king, he is said to be bad-tempered, ruthless and very cruel. So at the beginning, Ashok was very bad-tempered, ruthless and very cruel. This is known by the fact that he killed his 99 brothers. So if you kill your 99 brothers, obviously you must be a very cruel, very ruthless person. So at the beginning, he was this kind of a person. He even built a torture chamber to torture his prisoners to death. So he was very intolerant. He was very cruel at the beginning of his life. So that's why he was also known as, moniker means nickname. He was also known as Chanda Ashoka. Chand means cruel. Because of these kind of behaviors during his initial days, He was also known as Chand Ashoka. So these are the names written in religious text. So we read these religious texts today and we realize, okay, see, Ashoka is referred to as Chand Ashoka because of his bad and cruel nature. Now the most important event that is associated with his life is the Battle of Kaling, Kaling War. So once he became the king, he started expanding his empire by conquest. So remember, this Kaling is the same kingdom which Chandragupta Maurya also could not win. Chandragupta Maurya could not win Kaling, nor could Bindusar. Bindusar won 16 kingdoms, but he could not win Kaling. So now Ashok is giving it a try. Ashok thinks that my grandfather could not win Kaling, my father could not win Kaling, so but I am going to win Kaling. So he wages a war with Kalinga. Kaling means modern day Odisha. So in his 9th year of kingship, so he was already a king for 9 years, so he had gained power, and then he thought that I will fulfill the dreams of my grandfather and father. They had dreamt of winning Kaling, so now it's my turn. So he fought the battle of Kaling in 265 BC. This date is very important. See, I always highlight what is important, what is not important. So when I say that something is important, I expect you not to ignore that. So this date is important. Why? Because this has been asked. As simple as that. So the battle with Kaling was fought in 265 BC and it was personally led by Ashoka, and he was able to vanquish the Kalings. So he defeated them thoroughly. Whole cities were destroyed and more than 100,000 people were killed in the war. So large scale bloodshed took place, large scale. So the horrors of the war disturbed him so much. Whom? Ashok. Ashok was disturbed to see this large scale bloodshed. He had never expected that so many people are going to get killed, cities are going to get destroyed. So he didn't expect that. So when he saw this large scale suffering from his own eyes, so he had a melt of his heart. Because earlier he was very cruel. He was known as Chand Ashok. He killed his brothers. He made torture chambers. So he was a very cruel person. But when he saw that just to win Kaling, I killed so many people. So he had a melt of heart. He started to feel the regret that why did I kill these many people. He killed more than 100,000 people, 1 lakh people, 1 lakh plus people were killed. So because of this change of heart, he said that I will give up violence for the rest of his life. King giving up violence. King lives by his sword. King has to fight war. King always have to give punishments. But this king, King Ashok, he says that from now on, the remaining of rest of my life, so I am not going to indulge in any sort of violence. And he converted to Buddhism. So it was after Kaling war that he converted to Buddhism. How do we know that such a war had taken place, that Ashok converted to Buddhism? We can't make up stories. We have to have concrete proof. Please remember, it is Ashoka's 13th rock edict. So as I already told you that Ashoka used to plant this rock edicts all over his kingdom. So one such rock edict, which is known as Ashoka's 13th rock edict, by reading that rock edict, historians have been able to identify that a war took place in 265 BC in which Ashoka invaded Kalinga. So after converting to Buddhism, he now became Dharma Ashoka, because he now has taken an oath to follow the Dharma, the path of Dharma, for the rest of his life. So he is also known as Dharma Ashoka, or the pious one. Earlier he was known as Chand Ashoka or the cruel Ashoka, but now he is known as a pious ruler. Now, Ashoka and Buddhism. So, as you already know that he accepted Buddhism after the Battle of Kaling. He fought the Battle of Kaling in 9th year of his reign. So, he became a Buddhist in 9th year of his reign. Ashoka embraced Buddhism under the influence of a Buddhist monk known as Upgupta. Upgupta, you have to remember this fact, that who was the monk who converted Ashoka to Buddhism? Upgupta. These are one-liner questions, facts. Ashoka expanded friendly relations with states across Asia and Europe and sponsored Buddhist missions. So after becoming a Buddhist himself, so he started making efforts to spread Buddhism in various parts of Asia and Europe. For that, so he devoted himself, Ashok devoted himself to the cause of spreading Buddhism to faraway lands. For that, he took many steps. Ashoka commissioned the building of Sachi Stoop. Who built Sachi Stoop? Ashok. What is a stoop? So stoop, you can say stoop is built over some precious object. That means it's not that you can build stoop at any place. So basically the concept of stoop was that when Gautam Buddha, so he died, so his memoirs, his body parts, his nail, his hair, his tooth, all the remaining body parts were divided into 84,000 parts, and each part was given to kings or local rulers, and they were asked to build stupas over that. So one such stupa was built by Ashok. So Ashok, that stupa is today known as the greatest stupa existing today, that is Sachi Stoop. So the other step he took to spread Buddhism was he sent his son Mahindra and daughter Sanghamitra to Sri Lanka, who planted branches of original Bodhi tree there. Now what is Bodhi tree? Bodhi tree is the tree under which Gautam Buddha got enlightenment. So that tree was in Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya was part of Magad. So now Ashoka was the ruler of Magad. So he sent his son Mahindra and daughter to Sri Lanka, and along with them he sent branches of Bodhi tree, so that he just wanted to convey the message to Sri Lankans that please accept the invitation to convert to Buddhism. The other major event of his lifetime is he conducted or he convened the third Buddhist council. Third Buddhist council in 250 BC. So this was convened by Ashoka. Head monk was Mogaliputta Tisa. What is Buddhist council? In Buddhist council, invitation was given to the renowned monks. So they were invited by the king that please come to a certain place. So all these monks used to come together and they used to discuss, they used to debate, and they used to write books so that Buddhism may be refined, may be written, may be preserved. So you have to remember that third Buddhist council was convened by Ashoka. The head monk was Mogaliputta Tisa, and it was held at Pataliputra. Pataliputra, that means modern day Patna, because Pataliputra was the capital. Now the other thing for which Ashoka is remembered today, or you can say that we know so much about Ashoka because of his pillars and rock edicts. So you can see pillars. So Ashoka built many such pillars. So he used to write instructions over these pillars. So whatever the king wanted his people to read, he used to get that written over these pillars so that everybody could read that. So pillars and rock edicts built by King Ashoka has significant importance in architectural history of India. not only architectural history but history in general, because by reading these pillars today, much is known about that time period. So if these pillars were not there, we would have not known much about these kings. So pillars of eastern India are in Prakrit language. So during those times, the language spoken by Magad or the people of Magad was Prakrit. So Prakrit language in Brahmi script. See, language and scripts are two different things. We are speaking in English language. So I can write English using this script, English. Or I can write English, this is also English, but this is Hindi script, this is English script. The language may be same. So language was Prakrit, script was Brahmi. So Eastern India. So language same. In Eastern India, Brahmi script was being used, whereas in western part of Mauryan Empire, because Mauryans, they controlled area from Afghanistan to Bangladesh. So Bangladesh, east, Afghanistan, west. So in eastern part, Brahmi script was used. In western part, Prakrit in Kharoshthi script. That means Prakrit is the language, Kharoshthi is the script. So you have to remember, in East India, Brahmi, in West India, Kharoshthi. That means in places such as Gandhar, Takshila. So why this change in script? Because West India was under influence of Greek. So these scripts changed because of coming in contact with foreign people, foreigners. So script got changed. People of Patliputra were using some other scripts. People of Takshila, they were using some other scripts. But the language they spoke was same. These edicts were deciphered by the British archaeologist James Prinsep, another one-liner. So who deciphered Ashokan pillars and rock edicts? So James Prinsep was a high-ranking officer in Archaeological Survey of India. So during British era, so James Prinsep, he deciphered. That means deciphering means he decoded what is written over these pillars. 13th rock edict mentions Kalinga war. So 13th rock edict mentions Kalinga war. So there are so many rock edicts. Out of those, 13th is the most important one, because by decoding that we have come to know that Kalinga war was fought between King Ashoka and the people of Kalinga. Lion capital from the Ashokan pillar at Sarnath. So you can see this is the lion capital. Capital means the upper part. So you see this is pillar. The upper part of the pillar has a statue. So this statue is known as capital. So this has a statue of a lion. So this is known as lion capital. So one such pillar was constructed by Ashok at Sarnath. So Sarnath is a small city very near to Varanasi. So from that pillar, this portion, this statue has been taken and adopted as the national emblem of India. So if you see at the coins, so you will see three lions. So it is the same national emblem. This is the national emblem. So if somebody will ask, a question is asked, from where has the national emblem of India been derived? So you have to say it is taken from the Ashokan pillar of Sarnath. The other information or the other fact that you have to remember about Ashokan pillar is that one of the pillar of Kotla was shifted from Topra. So today you will find one Ashokan pillar at Kotla in Delhi. So it was actually Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So Firoz Shah Tughlaq brought this pillar from Ambala to Delhi. So question have been asked that which ruler of Delhi Sultanate or which ruler displaced the Ashokan pillar from Ambala to Delhi or Ambala to Kotla. So this was done by the ruler Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Now, Ashoka's death. So, Ashok died in 232 BC, dates not important, after ruling for 40 years. It is believed that after his death, his empire was divided into western and eastern part. Because already you have seen some differences have occurred. People living in western part, they have come in contact with Greeks, whereas eastern part was totally isolated. So after his death, his empire was divided into western and eastern part. The eastern part was ruled by Ashoka's grandson Dasrath. Eastern part, that means the actual epicenter of Mauryan dynasty, with its center at Patliputra. So that was ruled by Ashoka's grandson, whose name was Dasrath, while the western part was governed by Samprati. We don't know who this guy Samprati is, how is he associated with Ashok, we don't know. But we know that Dasrath is Ashoka's own grandson. Now, how did the Mauryan Empire came to an end? So we have seen that Mauryan dynasty had been so lucky to have great rulers such as Chandragupta Maurya. Even Bindusara was great because he conquered land between two seas. And Ashoka, beyond doubt, is one of the greatest emperors that India have known. Now, how did such a great empire come to an end? So let us understand. After Ashok, under the late kings, the center's hold over the vast empire began to disintegrate. So as you already saw that immediately after Ashok's death, one single empire was divided into two parts. So if the empire is getting divided, obviously it is becoming weak. And you can say this is on its path of disintegrating. Small parts. The last Maurya king, Brihadrath, so after Ashok's death, it set on a path of gradual decline. And slowly you have the last ruler in form of Brihadrath. So the last Mauryan king was Brihadrath. He was overthrown by his own army commander. So he was overthrown by his own army commander, whose name was Pushyamitra. Pushyamitra. So the last Mauryan ruler is Brihadrath. Please remember this fact. So what happened to Brihadrath? He was overthrown by his own minister Pushyamitra. So during the rule of Brihadrath, there was an internal revolt led by his army chief Pushyamitra Sung in about 185 or 186 BC. So dates not very critical, you don't have to remember this. So how do we know this? Because a poet called Bana Bhatt, so there was a poet known as Bana Bhatt, so he lived in 6th century AD. So he has written a book known as Harsh Charitra. So in that book, this story of the last Mauryan king known as Brihadrath is mentioned there. That the last Mauryan king Brihadrath was actually killed by his own army chief when he was witnessing an army parade. So now, if the king is killed, the dynasty comes to an end. So the last Mauryan king Brihadrath gets killed. So if the last king is killed, that means the dynasty is over. So this ended the rule of the Mauryans over Magad and started the Sung's dynasty rule. So the next ruler, because Pushyamitra Sung had killed the king and had taken over the throne, so the next dynasty came to be known as Sung dynasty's rule. So this is how, or this is the complete story of Mauryan Empire. So I will reiterate before closing that if two chapters are most important from ancient India, those two chapters are Indus Valley and then Mauryans. So please do not ignore any of the smallest fact mentioned in this video. I already have told you which facts you are not supposed to remember, facts such as dates, because dates do not matter that much in ancient India. So rest you are well aware of. So that is all for now.